Well, I have not done this in a really long time. It's been a while since I did an immediate pay per view reaction to an event right after it happened. But, with all the changes in my life and, becoming a father and everything, I haven't had too much time for watching pay per views live as they happen. I normally have to watch them on catch up later, a day or two later. So immediate reactions are things I haven't been able to do in a long time. But I'm currently out of town. I'm currently in New Jersey for a special event that I will elaborate on later this week, the next time you see me. But for right now, this is going to be all about AEW All Out 2024, the first live pay per view I've watched in a while. I've watched plenty of pay per views, but it's been a long time since I've seen one live. But since I've, had time to kill this weekend, I figured, why not? Let's just dabble and watch an AEW pay per view that I probably wouldn't have watched live under normal circumstances, but I'm out of town, had some free time, and I thought, let's just kill a Saturday night and just do that and watch that. So, um, I did talk about previously how uh, All In turned out, the Wembley show, and how I thought that was generally a pretty good show. Since then, I have seen Bash in Berlin from WWE, a show that I thought was mostly fine, if not a little predictable. I thought Punk and Drew McIntyre was a pretty good match. Cody and Kevin Owens was really predictable. Nobody honestly thought that Kevin was going to win that match. The women's tag title match was there. Again, I think everybody expected Jade and Bianca to win those belts back. Um, Punk, I think we all expected him to get his win back, but now it looks like we're setting up Hell in a Cell between him and Drew, which I think is going to be a nice way to be a capstone to that feud, and hopefully it goes well. And Gunther versus Orton, I thought was pretty solid, nice, hard hitting match, but again, kind of predictable because there was no way on earth that Gunther was losing the belt in Germany. There was absolutely no way that was going to happen. So, and the mixed tag I thought was pretty fun and pretty satisfying to anybody who's been following the storyline. So I thought that came off pretty well. So overall, like Bash in Berlin was mostly fine. I'm glad that it was under 3 hours, which we're gonna come right to AEW on this one, but I'm glad that it was under 3 hours and was a pretty quick show. But there were only 5 matches on it, and most of them went pretty long, which kind of made the show feel longer than it really was. And again, that's one of my problems with modern wrestling, where it's like the matches are too long, the shows are too long, and it's just everybody's all about more, 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 more. And I'm like, you could scale a few minutes off of a lot of these, and I think you'd be fine. And case in point, AEW All Out 2024. The main card had 8 matches on it. The pre-show had 4 tag matches that were fairly disposable, and if they'd only done like 1 or 2 of them, I probably would have been okay with it. But they did 4 of them, and I was like, okay, it's all starting to blend together. I don't even remember who was in each match now. I think it was the Acclaimed versus the Iron Savages. It was there was a trios match. I think it was the Bang Bang Gang versus who did they face? The Dark Order. They faced the Dark Order, and it was Hologram, Sammy Guevara, and Dustin Rhodes who faced the Premier Athletes. Is that what their name is? Yeah. And then you got like a 3-way trios match with 12 people in it. And I was like, screw it. I'm not even going to try to figure out who's in this. But so the pre show was pretty exhausting. Best part of that was Mariah May being great and shoving the injured Sky Blue down and just being delightfully nasty. I'm really digging Mariah. She's really starting to come into her own and become a wonderful presence on the show. But then we get to the main card, and I think every single match on this show had to be in that 15 to 20 minute. And then when you get into the main events, both of them were in the 30-minute range. And it's like, oh my God, this is so long. And it's a 4-hour show where every match went long. And it's one of those things where I'm like, guys, if you're not going to have filler matches, could you please have an intermission at the halfway point or something? Like, there's got to be some kind of a break in the action to kind of build us back up, because it's like the way they do things, they expect the fans to have the same level of excitement all night long. And when you're constantly doing stuff and doing all these big spots and all these big things and all these big moments, it gets to a point where you're just like, how am I supposed to keep a level of excitement? Because you're constantly, everything's a pop, everything is like a high that they're trying to keep us high the entire time, and it's just not possible. It's like being on a roller coaster. The whole thing can't just be um just the big drop. You've got to build up to the big drop, and it's like you got to like go down and then build yourself back up and everything. And it's a lot of the excitement with the roller coaster is the anticipation for that first drop, and it's you kind of lose a lot of that when every match tries to be incredible, and it becomes exhausting after a while, quite honestly. And this was one of those shows, and AEW has been guilty of it for a long time, and it's been a common criticism I've had of them, and it reared its ugly head here again. And we got into a situation where the first match had blood. Um, there was a match in the mid card that was a violent hardcore match that had plenty of blood and light tubes and thumbtacks. And then you got to the co-main event, the world title match, which ended with a post-match angle that involved attempted murder. And by the time you've seen all of that, it's like, what on earth are Swerve and Hangman supposed to do to live up to being an unsanctioned match? Because the fans had already pretty much seen everything up to that point. Now, what they ended up doing was memorable, and I'm sure will be talked about for a while, but I'll get there. So going over the full card, we started off with what probably ended up being my favorite match on the show, just from a pure like enjoyment standpoint. It was MJF defeating Daniel Garcia with a brutal match, plenty of violence, where MJF spent most of it dominating, and he bloodied up Daniel Garcia. And then Garcia fought back, almost made the heroic babyface comeback. MJF blowed him, rolled him up, got the win. But Daniel beat him up post-match, hit a low blow, and then hit him with a super pile driver off the middle rope. And MJF did the stretcher job. So it was like all of that came off really well. It was also, again, probably my favorite match on the show. And it I don't want to say the show peaked early. I just want to say like it was like, whoa, that was incredible. And then every other match after that tried to be incredible, and it just became like it became hard to keep up with after a while. Next up was the tag title match: the Young Bucks defeating the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. This was a Young Bucks match through and through, with Claudio doing some cool things, like his block of the EVP trigger was pretty cool. But other than that, it was just kind of like it was every Young Bucks match. Like if you've seen this match, you've seen 90% of the Young Bucks matches, and it was like, all right, fine, whatever. Didn't really care. Then we got Will Ospreay versus Pac, which was the exact type of match that's going to get like 7 stars when the reviews start coming out on this show. A lot of hard work from both guys, a lot of dangerous spots with guys landing on their necks and their head, and I'm like, ugh. Calm it down, guys. A lot of big finisher kickouts, all the things that normally play into like the work rate crowd and giving them what they want. And it was an exciting match and very impressive athletically from two guys who can absolutely do that type of stuff. And it in that regard, it worked. Again, I don't think anybody anticipated Pac to beat Ospreay for the belt, especially after he just won it from MJF. 2 weeks ago, I was like, he's not losing this match, and that was another problem with this show, where it's like, in most cases, it was fairly predictable. In one case, it was the post match where all of my predictions kind of flew out the window. I was like, whoa, that caught me off guard. That caught me by surprise. But anyway, the international title match was pretty good, and the kind of match that Ospreay and AEW are kind of known for, and I mean that as a positive. It's just that, is this the type of thing I'm going to remember like 6 months from now? Probably not, but it was an exciting, impressive, athletic match from two guys who can do it. So, thumbs up for that. Then we got the Chicago street fight between Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale, which was way more violent than I was anticipating. Used about every hardcore gimmick in the book, and I was like, man, this is getting nasty. This is getting pretty violent. And if you like violence, this certainly lived up to it. It was certainly the better of the two women's matches, I'll say that. There was that table spot where Statlander was doing like a flip dive onto Willow, and Willow was supposed to move out of the way, but Statlander's legs like landed on her head, and I'm like, well, this match is over, because there's no way that didn't knock out Willow. And Willow continued like nothing happened. I'm like, dang, maybe it wasn't bad as it looked, but man, it looked nasty in real time for sure. But yeah, they use light tubes, they use thumbtacks, which again, I'm thinking about the main event. I'm like, what on earth are Hangman and Swerve going to do if they're using thumbtacks and light tubes on the mid card? And I'm like, all right, I guess we'll find out. But holy Moses, that was wild. So yeah, that match over delivered, I would say, in terms of like what I was expecting out of it. Then we got the four-way match for the Continental Championship. Kazuchika Okada successfully defending against Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Takeshita. Now, I never thought I would live to see the day where Kazuchika Okada, who was, go back and watch my previous videos talking about New Japan. This dude was one of my favorite guys to watch. But it's like every match on the show went so long that a piss break match had to come somewhere. And I ultimately picked the four-way because it's like, it's a four-way title match that is ice cold, has no story going for it. It's just four guys that are going to go in there and do spots. I can go take a piss break. I don't think I'm going to miss anything. And sure enough, I missed a good portion of this match because of that. I had to go to the bathroom and just catch my breath and cool down a little bit. Came back to it, and it was, yeah, it's four guys doing around, going spots. It's exactly what you would expect out of a four-way match in the modern era, where it's just like, yeah, they're just hitting all their spots and doing all their kickouts and all that other fancy stuff. Okada got the win. Not surprised by that at all. It was what it was. Then we got the TBS Championship match. Mercedes Moné successfully defending against Hikaru Shida. Again, a match where I don't think anybody figured that the title could change hands here. This was just an excuse to get Mercedes on the show. This match kind of fell flat, and I think this was where the exhaustion of the show was really starting to be felt, where it's like, oh my God, we're getting another one that's going long, really? And it's like, look, it's just let Mercedes beat her in like 8 to 10 at this point. Like, it's not like, these people, they're so worried about star ratings and getting those good reviews. And, like, sometimes just, and it happened, at Wembley where Jack Perry, who's being set up for a title match against Darby, their match got cut short or whatever, but he basically just destroyed Darby. And it's like, well, yeah, he's being set up as the top contender. So it kind of worked out. And it's like, yeah, it's not the greatest match in the world, but it played into something later. And it's like maybe making Mercedes more of a dominant champion would mean more here than doing yet another back and forth, working through the epic match formula that's been perfected and overused in today's modern wrestling, and just doing yet another match that uses that. And this match is following, a wild hardcore match between Willow and Chris Statlander, so it's not going to live up to it in any way. And I don't know, like, it's just the girls didn't have much of a shot here. It was just it was almost like they were in the death spot, because they're right before the two main events, and they're coming right after a bunch of stuff that already happened on this show. So it's just kind of it was hard to stay invested in this match, again, because the finish was predictable. We all knew Mercedes was going to retain, and the action was, and the pacing and the format was way too similar to other matches that happened on the show. So it just kind of fell flat. Then we got the world title match. Again, nobody honestly thought that Bryan Danielson was going to lose this match. The outcome was pretty obvious. Nobody honestly thought Jack Perry was going to win. But it was fun to see Danielson do his thing. He was still massively over with the crowd. It was fun to watch that whole routine. And this whole idea that he's going to, once he loses the title, that's the end of his full-time career, I think is a nice story. That kind of adds a little spice to all of his matches, because it's like, all right, is this going to be the one where it's done? Is this going to be the one where it's done? So it adds a little bit more to all of his title matches, even the predictable ones like this one, because it's like, you never know. It could be the end. And, if you don't check out the show, you could be missing Danielson's retirement as a full-time performer. So, there's that. And so I thought the match was pretty good for what it was. I guess you would say it was a fairly standard Danielson match, but overall went pretty well. But what got me was the post-match, which was insane, because it looked like, first of all, Killswitch attacked Bryan Danielson, had a stare down with Jack Perry, his former tag team partner. Then Christian comes out and makes it look like he's going to cash in his not Money in the Bank contracted title shot, but then the BCC comes out, protects Danielson, and keeps the cash in from happening. Patriarchy goes away, and it looks like we're all buddy buddy here with the Blackpool Combat Club. Moxley recently came back on Dynamite, has been kind of doing his own thing with Marina Shafir. We don't know what that's all about yet. And I was even asking, because they didn't really say much, if anything, on TV about. So if Moxley's off doing his own thing, is he out of the BCC? Like, what's going on here? So they've addressed it here, and it looked like everybody was all united and everything's all good and ready to go until Claudio uppercut Danielson, and then and then Moxley took a plastic bag and wrapped it around Danielson's face and basically tried to murder him on live TV. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? It was kind of like, because the show was going so long, I was kind of like getting into like my sleepy stupor. I'm like, And then that happened, and I was like, wait, what is happening right now? So it got my attention. It woke me up for sure, and it definitely caught me off guard. It was definitely shocking, and I was like, okay, that adds a little spice to whatever storylines they're telling, and there's different layers to everything going on right now because Wheeler Yuta didn't know this was happening and started crying. By the way, he's not a good actor, and again, I don't see anything in Wheeler Yuta, but anyway, whatever. He didn't support Danielson getting attacked, while the rest of the BCC just kind of held him back. And while Moxley almost committed murder live on television, live on pay-per-view, and so it's like you have that little wrinkle in the story. It's like, well, they're the trios champions, so what's going to happen with that? Like, where's Wheeler Yuta going to stand in all this? So there's a lot of things going on storyline-wise, and it to that end, it was very effective. The image of Danielson being smothered like that was downright disturbing and shocking, which I'm sure is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. I've always been the type of guy, let heels be heels, let them kick the puppies, let them do every awful thing imaginable, because that's what makes stories more interesting to me. If you have somebody who really does awful, terrible things, because then you want to see them get beat, and that's how it's supposed to work. And that's true of any story, not just professional wrestling. And that leads us into the main event, which, again, by this point, bloody opener with a stretcher job, wild hardcore match with thumbtacks and light tubes, attempted murder in the match right before it. I'm sitting there thinking, like, what on earth are Hangman and Swerve going to do? Like, I made the joke on Twitter. It's like they're going to have to start throwing hand grenades at each other, bringing guns to the ring or something, because it's like, what else can they do that hasn't already been done on the show? Because this is the unsanctioned, the lights out match. And it's like, so all of that stuff before, well, I guess the post-match attack on Danielson wouldn't have been sanctioned anyway, because that wasn't part of a match. But it's like all of that other stuff was sanctioned, but what are they going to do in this? And I think the match kind of had a little trouble getting going, again, for that reason, where it's like they're trying to be super violent, but they did the staple gun spot, which I don't like the staple gun spot because it looks so hokey and fake. And I've worked with staple guns before, and I've never, been dumb enough to take one to my skin and do it, but there is so much power in those things that it's like, man, that would hurt like a bitch if you got hit with a staple gun like that, or if you got like a staple like shot into you with one of those, because there's so much power that you have to really push down on the handle to really force it out, and it's like, man, that would hurt. And of course I'm thinking, like, dude, these things are like bricks anyway, just hit them with the staple gun, you don't have to stick them. But so it's not a spot that I'm a fan of. So of course they did that spot again, which they did in one of their earlier matches too. Not as bloody as their previous match. I remember the Texas Death match they had, where that one seemed a lot bloodier. I was expecting a lot of blood in this one. Didn't get super bloody, but got disturbing in its own ways as the match progressed and the spots got bigger, and they used cinder block, which I don't know if that was gimmicked or what, but some of the spots they did with the cinder block were pretty sick and cringe-inducing. And then for the finish, Hangman pulls out a hypodermic needle and sticks it in Swerve's mouth. I think what they were going for was, like, they're trying to make it appear like the needle was sticking out through Swerve's cheek, which it didn't. And, like, I don't know how you would even pull that off, but that was like, okay, that's a little intense, but what they're trying to do there. And then you get like a sick chair shot to the head, which I am sure is going to be talked about extensively in the reviews, about how dangerous that is. But it was a sick one. I noticed the camera cut away, so I'm wondering if the chair was like gimmicked in some way, and they just wanted to hide it to some degree. I don't know. Like I don't know how they did the spot or anything, but it was a sick, nasty chair shot. Even though the camera kind of cut away from it, it was still kind of sick. And the referee called the bell, stopped the match, and Hangman got the win. Got that elusive win over Swerve after attempted murder. It's like we had two matches in a row that ended with attempted murder. So it was a brutal match for sure. It took a while to get there, but man, it was pretty brutal. They actually started fighting at the beginning, and they were like fighting on the mat over the apron while the cage was coming down and making it look like, oh god, they're gonna get crushed by the cage. Which, yeah, the whole thing was, yeah, it was again. It took a while to get there. Maybe the match was a little too long on a show that was full of matches that went way too long, but it got brutal by the end. So I guess you could say it lived up to whatever it was advertising. But again, usually sick violence doesn't really affect me all that much, but I can see a lot of people being disturbed by this. We'll see what the ultimate reaction to this is. But I will say, for a pay per view that came, um, right after the Wembley show, it almost feels like the setup they have with All In and All Out, where it's almost like they're treating All Out like New Year's Dash, where it's like the first big show after we just ran the dome and all that other fun stuff. But it's like, yeah, but New Year's Dash is more like a Raw. This is like a pay-per-view that you're expecting people to fork money over for, and it's like, it's a little much. Like, I don't like having two pay-per-views so close to each other. I think it's a mistake. Of course I ordered both of them, but be that as it may, a lot of people are not going to order both of them. That's a lot to expect from people, and I don't know. But for a show in a really bad position, they did some things that were memorable. I'll give them that. Like the turn on Bryan Danielson. I was like, okay. I mean, that's something. We'll have to see how that follows up. That's got me intrigued, and the violence in the Hangman Swerve match is like, well, there's something you don't see every day. I can at least say that. So. They did some stuff, but again, it's like the problems that plague this show are a lot of the problems that plague a lot of AEW shows and a lot of shows in general, quite honestly. WWE's made the move to like keeping it to like 3 hours, which I think is very, very helpful. I wish they would shorten their matches too to go along with that. That would be nice, but as is, it's like 3 hour shows is so much better than like 4 and 5 hour shows. And because I mean, WWE was doing it first. Like some of those WrestleManias just became ridiculous, and yeah, I think 4 hours. It's 6 hours if you count the 2 hour pre-show, which is loaded with matches. That's a lot of time to expect from people, and when all of the matches on these shows are going long and long, and let me take a look at these match times. I have it pulled up. On the main card, the shortest match, according to Wikipedia, I don't know how accurate these times are, but the shortest match, according to Wikipedia, on the main card, they have both the Chicago Street Fight and the four-way as going 15 minutes. On the nose, which I imagine that's not completely accurate, but it's like those are the shortest matches they have listed on a 8-match card. Again, main card, on a pre-show that had 4 matches on it. So it's like, that's a lot. That's a lot, and it's not a very well-paced pay-per-view. And it's like, again, if you're not going to have filler matches, at least have an intermission. I think an intermission would help people breathe, get their composure. I mean, baseball games have the 7th-inning stretch for a reason. I mean, come on, just give people a break, and then they'll get themselves ready, and then they'll come back. And they'll be more willing to accept whatever you're being given, because you can feel like they start off red hot, and then the energy kind of fades as the show progresses, as they have more and more and more and more like awesome 5-star matches thrown at them. So that's my take on All Out 2024. Had its moments. for sure. One part in particular that really got me, so I give him credit for that. But again, the pacing's off and the show is way too long. The matches are too long, and that's something that needs to be fixed. But that is all I have for you now. I will have a video lined up for you this week that will not be wrestling related. It's going to be something fun that I'm talking about, and the reason I'm in Jersey this weekend. But I will be back later this week. Again, if you want to submit questions for an upcoming question and answers video, you can email them. Send your questions to the email address down in the description below. And if you want to keep up to date on my the content that I produce for this channel, be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new stuff. And I'm going to try and keep this once a week pace that I've got going, so we'll see how well I do with that. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you all later.